outline of one politician, but in unison by all of them, almost like it was coordinated. A deadly insurrection. That's how history may record January 6th. But the tape that we reviewed from within the building on that day proves it was neither an insurrection nor deadly. Here it is.
January 6th, when an estimated 2,000 rioters breached the Capitol building, causing the deaths of 5 police officers.
Certain dates echo throughout history. December 7th, 1941. September 11th, 2001. And January 6th.
The mob beat officers with anything they had on them. Hockey stick, flagpole, a fire extinguisher. Police officers died.
Donald Trump supporters who, of course, rioted and killed police officers.
By the evening of January 6th, the Democratic Party and its publicists in the national news media had settled on a description of what had happened that day. They distilled an enormous number of highly complex events that even now we don't fully understand, into a single emotionally laden political slogan, which they've repeated for years with remarkable discipline. January 6th, they said, was a deadly insurrection.
There was a deadly insurrection that the right wing is trying to cover up.
He incited a deadly insurrection.
Incited a deadly insurrection.
The violent, deadly insurrection on the Capitol 9 months ago, it was about white supremacy in my view.
A deadly insurrection. Everything about that phrase is a lie. Very little about January 6th was organized or violent. Surveillance video from inside the Capitol shows mostly peaceful chaos. But the slogan worked. The term deadly carries enormous emotional power, which is why they used it. To prove the insurrection was deadly, propagandists pointed to the death of an officer called Brian Sicknick. The mob killed Officer Brian Sicknick. That's what they said. It was their single most powerful indictment of the January 6th protesters and of Donald Trump and of Republican voters nationally. They repeated that claim for years. They are still repeating it. At first, they told the country that Officer Sicknick was murdered with a fire extinguisher.
Officer Brian Sicknick died after being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher during the fight.
That story came from the New York Times, which is effectively the assignment editor for most of the rest of American media. It was a lie, untrue in any way. But only after that lie had hardened into conventional wisdom did the newspaper bother to retract it.
The New York Times has quietly retracted its story about the death of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick.
The damage had been done. Brian Sicknick, himself a Trump voter, had been transformed without his consent into a political martyr of the left. His memory was shamelessly exploited by the incoming Biden administration. In February of 2021, Sicknick's body lay in state in the Capitol Rotunda, where a parade of unscrupulous politicians made use of it. Here's Joe Biden.
Breaking down the doors, trying to overturn an outcome of election, and killing several police officers in the meantime.
But Brian Sicknick should not be reduced to a prop for the political ambitions of the Democratic Party. He was a human being. The facts of his life matter, including how he died. To this day, media accounts describe Sicknick as someone who was, quote, slain on January 6th. The video we reviewed proves that is a lie. Here is surveillance footage of Sicknick walking in the Capitol after he was supposedly murdered by the mob outside. By all appearances, Sicknick is healthy and vigorous. He's wearing a helmet, so it's hard to imagine he was killed by a head injury. Whatever happened to Brian Sicknick was very obviously not the result of violence he suffered at the entrance to the Capitol. This tape overturns the single most powerful and politically useful lie the Democrats have told us about January 6th. And it was indeed a lie. The January 6th committee knew perfectly well that Brian Sicknick was walking normally through the Capitol after he was supposedly murdered by Trump supporters. And they know that because they saw this tape. We can be sure because the footage contains an electronic bookmark that is still archived in the Capitol's computer system. That means that investigators working for the Democratic Party reviewed this tape. They saw it, but they refused to release the tape to the public. Why? Because this tape would shatter the fraud they were perpetrating on the country. Because hiding the truth served their political interest. They lied about the police officer they claimed to revere. If they were willing to do that, then their dishonesty knew no limits. And as you'll see in a moment, their dishonesty did know no limits. New surveillance video in just a minute, including new reporting on Ray Epps and what he was doing there, and what he told investigators he was doing there, and how it's contradicted by the video evidence. But first, to assess what we just saw, Charlie Hurt of the Washington Times joins us now. Charlie, thanks so much for coming on. So if you think, and you've really got a feel for Brian Sicknick, who's passed away, and you've got to wonder about anyone who knew that he was not murdered by the mob, but they've claimed it anyway for 2 years. And it takes a very low kind of person to do that, to lie about a man's death like that for political advantage. And this tape proves that's exactly what they did.
No, these people are truly sick. You think you know how sick they are, and then you see something like this, and you realize that there is truly nothing, no body, no event, nothing that they won't exploit. And as Joe Biden said, oh no, this is also about white supremacy. And nobody comported themselves worse than the press did on this day, and of course in the years afterwards. And the best example of it is to look at the degree to which so many people in the press are so upset that you got the tapes and that you're going to release the tapes. I've never heard of this. I've never, in all of my life, I've never known a press that didn't want information to be released. That's what we have been fighting for since the invention of the printing press. And now we have all these people, they're so committed to sort of the big lie that the government tells that they'll do anything, including denigrating the name of a good police officer and trying to hide the truth in order to sort of prop up this propaganda. The deadly insurrection is one of them. The other one that they love to talk about is the armed insurrectionists. And I remember at the time asking reporters at the time, why do you keep calling these people armed insurrectionists when there's no evidence that anybody used any arms against it? And they said, well, they had flagpoles. So it's because people were walking around with American flags. That made them armed insurrectionists.
I should say for our viewers who don't know, you've been in journalism all your life. Your father was a journalist. You grew up in this business. And I agree with you. It's shocking to see how thoroughly it's been perverted into what it is now.
To support the government.
Right. Active defense of the people in charge. It's shocking. Charlie Hurt, appreciate it. Thank you.
Great to see you.
So there's one takeaway from all of the footage that we went through, thousands of hours over the past 3 weeks, is that the January 6th committee lied, that the press bought and repeated their lies, and that those lies were used to strip the civil liberties, in some cases the freedoms, of voters across the country, really to eliminate some of our core human rights in this country. So in a moment, we're going to show you new proof, new evidence of that, video they withheld, including video of Ray Epps. That's straight ahead.